Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical on YouTube at Stillman & Co. Like and subscribe, as of course we are past the trade deadline, which means, ladies and gentlemen, we have 8 more football games, 9 weeks because the Titans are on a bye. We have 9 weeks to trudge through. And then once we're done trudging, then they can start over and we can see if this team is going to ever be good again at football. And today, we had the Mike Borgonzi press conference. In fact, Nick Suss is going to join us. He was at the Mike Borgonzi press conference. He's going to join us at 2:35 here today on the program. And, of course, like and subscribe and get in here and everything else. But today, we had the Mike Borgonzi press conference, and I was at the Mike Borgonzi press conference, and I have already seen a couple of your comments. Brady says, do you trust Mike Borgonzi? Christopher says, interested to hear your thoughts on the Borgonzi press conference. Well, of course, that is, in fact, where we are going to start, right there with the Mike Borgonzi press conference today. The Mike Borgonzi press conference reaction. And boy, do I have a lot of thoughts. And I actually love the fact that in this new format, I don't have to string it all out there for 4 hours. So we don't have to take each cut and dissect it and say, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? It's kind of like, hey, this is what I think. Now, I don't know if you guys watched cable news last night. They were hyping up election night in America, in which Lindsay said to me, election night? I was like, it's election night in New York City for the mayor. It's election night in Virginia for the governor. It's election night for something in California. I don't know. Probably more weed smoking or crapping in public. I don't know. Not a big deal to me, but election night in America. And the one thing I guess I've realized, I don't care about who the mayor in New York City is. And I don't think the people in New York care who the mayor of Nashville is. But what I've learned through this is that sometimes when it comes to ideologies and things that I believe or things that these politicians believe or that things that other voters believe, sometimes we're just not going to believe the same things. And sometimes the side that I believe wins, and sometimes the side that I believe doesn't win. And what happens is when the side I believe doesn't win, I shrug my shoulders and say, well, I guess that's what the voters want. And so we're going to have to do things that aren't my way. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't work, but it's not the way I would do it. And that was my main takeaway today after the Mike Borgonzi press conference, because I sat up there and I'm glad Mike Borgonzi did a press conference. He did not have to do a press conference. Last year, Rand Carthon did not do a press conference after the trade deadline, though Rand Carthon offered to do one reportedly, and Chad Brinker shut that down. But I think Titans fans needed a Mike Borgonzi press conference. And I listened to the Mike Borgonzi press conference, and I listened intently. And after I left the facility, it hit me exactly how I feel about the Borgonzi press conference and exactly how I feel about the state of the Tennessee Titans and where they're going compared to where they have been. I had a realization after listening to Mike Borgonzi that Mike Borgonzi has a long-term plan. I'm convinced of it. I believe that Mike Borgonzi believes in the long-term plan he has, and he's going to try to execute the long-term plan he has. Now, we'll see if Mount Amy erupts before he's able to execute the plan or not, but he's got a plan. That being said, I don't agree with the plan, if that makes sense. Again, there are certain things in politics people vote for that I didn't vote for. and that I don't agree with. And people can be upset about it, but I'm like, I didn't vote for that. Maybe it'll work. Usually it doesn't. Maybe it'll work, but I didn't vote for that. Mike Borgonzi has a plan. Rand Carthon never had a plan. There was no plan. I mean, I kept looking at this team saying, who's going to play right tackle? And it was like, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, right fucking tackle? Don't make me tell that story again. Those guys didn't have a plan. Brian Callahan didn't have a plan. Brian Callahan's plan was, we're going to go out, get a bunch of random guys, and I will coach them. We're going to take a bunch of Scarbinis on the offensive line, and my dad will coach them. That's not a plan. So again, Rand didn't have a plan. Callahan didn't have a plan. Borgonzi has a plan. I just don't agree with the plan. Mike Borgonzi's plan for building the team, if you were listening closely today, is as simple as, I got this young quarterback, and he's going to go through the tough times, and he's going to learn on the fly, and he's going to improve while he plays. And while we go through the shit, we're going to acquire young and ascending pieces to put in around the young quarterback, like they feel like they have in Chimere DK. And that Cam has the personality to be able to take all the shit that he's going to have to deal with and be better for it. He believes that Cam Ward has the talent to overcome everything he's going to have to go through and everything that he's going through right now. Being on a bad team, change of coach after the first 6 games, etc. He believes the talent that Cam Ward has, the personality that Cam Ward has, the makeup of Cam Ward is so strong that this guy will be able to handle the tough times and it'll make him better. The same way Joe Burrow was able to handle the tough times in Cincinnati when he got there, and his offensive line was so bad and got his ACL busted. And the next year they were in the Super Bowl. The same way Peyton Manning went 3-13 with that horrendous defense out there in Indianapolis. But Peyton will get it figured out. Joe got it figured out. Trevor Lawrence, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to overcome every bad card that was dealt to him in Jacksonville. So Mike Borgonzi believes Cam is going to be that Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow guy. I just don't believe that. I do not believe that Cam is that talented. I do not believe that Cam is that good. Then there's the Jeffery Simmons part of this. Mike Borgonzi's plan is for Jeffery Simmons to lead the defense into the next era of Titan football. That there is a sentiment that this thing will get turned around and that Jeff will be the reason why this thing gets turned around. A la Jarrell Casey. If you remember, Jarrell Casey was a big part of this team, even when they were bad. And when they got out of the sludge factory that they were in, 2012, 13, 14, 15, and they got out of the sludge factory and started competing again, 2016 through 2019, Jarrell Casey was a huge part of that. And I think they look at Simmons and say, he's going to be a huge part of us getting out of the mud. Again, I think you're better off using the assets that you would have gotten in return for Jeff Simmons in order to get out of the mud. So I don't necessarily believe that. What they believe with Cam Ward, I don't believe. What they believe with Simmons, I don't believe. But just because I don't agree with his plan to rebuild the team doesn't mean that I don't recognize that he actually has a plan. Just because it isn't the way I would do it doesn't mean that his plan can't work. And there are tons of ways to build contenders in the NFL. And for every single philosophy, there is an example of that philosophy working. For instance, the Reclamation Project quarterback. Because a lot of people will say, well, you can't win the Super Bowl with a Reclamation Project. Daniel Jones won't win the Super Bowl. Well, Steve Young and Drew Brees were reclamation project quarterbacks. Steve Young was given up on after Tampa Bay. And in San Francisco, he won a Super Bowl. Drew Brees, drafted over by Phillip Rivers, injured in San Diego, goes to New Orleans and wins a Super Bowl. You can do it building your team around a reclamation project quarterback. You can draft a quarterback number 1 overall and have them become the Messiah, a la John Elway, Peyton Manning. You can build a team and then recruit a top flight quarterback when you have that team built to go take you to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady did it in Tampa Bay. Matthew Stafford did it with the Rams. So in every instance, whatever way you want to build your football team, there's an example of it working. People are crapping on the Jets, saying they had all these great players and they got rid of them and all they got in return are picks. I mean, what's that going to do? Well, when Jimmy Johnson rebuilt the Dallas Cowboys with the Herschel Walker trade, that's an example of it working. The Cleveland Browns on 2 separate occasions, the deal they made with the Falcons for the Julio Jones pick and the deal they made with the Eagles for the Carson Wentz pick, on 2 separate occasions loaded up with a crap load of draft picks, and it didn't mean anything. So I'm open to somebody having a different philosophy than I have, and I'm open to it working. But I am also aware enough to say, if I owned the football team and this was Mike Borgonzi's plan for how he was going to rebuild the football team, when I sat down and interviewed him to be the general manager, personally, I wouldn't have hired him. But I don't know the team. So, again, to me, he made it very clear. He made a couple of things very, very clear today. The first thing I think he made abundantly clear today was that, look, he thinks Cam Ward, no matter what happens to Cam Ward, he thinks Cam Ward is going to come out of it on the other side as a franchise quarterback. And look, Mel Kiper Jr. didn't think Cam Ward was that good. And Dane Brugler at The Athletic didn't think Cam Ward was that good. And I didn't think Cam Ward was that good. And a lot of people not named Louis Riddick didn't think that Cam Ward was that good. But Mike Borgonzi thinks Cam Ward is that good. He's convinced of it. He is convinced that regardless of the mechanics, regardless of whatever you want to say, he's got it inside of him to be this great quarterback and this great leader to take the Titans to the promised land. Again, I don't agree with it, but that's his philosophy. And I think it's obvious that for whatever reason, they're planning to build this around Jeffery Simmons on defense instead of using Jeffery Simmons to build the team. So those were the 2 things that I thought he made very clear. There is a third thing that I thought he made very clear that I do want to get to. We'll do that here in just a second. That I think this is, pretty important. And I don't know if the fans think this is pretty important, but I do want to get to that. First, though, we're going to talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, the presenting sponsor of this program. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. Of happy, you'll be, the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. And care is their core value. That means that they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. So they'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. I know this. I use Hiller at my home. They do a fabulous job. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. So this was a big deal to me. Maybe it's not a big deal to you. And it's your business if it's not a big deal to you, but I went there today and there were really 2 questions that I had that mattered to me that I felt like, again, I don't care if it matters to you. I'm thinking about this as to how I feel about the Titans. And the 2 questions were about the plan for Cam, basically in which they said, we're not going to mess Cam up. Cam can't be messed up. Cam will go through it and Cam will be better because of it. And then there is the authority and responsibility as far as what do you actually do? Because in other organizations, the president is more of a CEO businessman. He goes to the Rotary functions and he hobnobs with the mayor. And in the suite during the game, he's the one who's always talking to the senator who decided to show up this week. Well, that's not what Chad Brinker does. Chad Brinker, as he has said on several occasions, Chad Brinker watches film. Chad Brinker has a scouting background. Chad Brinker is the president of football operations. He is not the president of the Tennessee Titans. That's somebody else. And at the beginning of the press conference, Mike Borgonzi talked about how they want to earn the trust back with the fans. And I heard that, and I'm like, how can you earn the trust back with the fans when, first of all, the fans don't believe in Chad Brinker at all? He's been a part of all of this. He's pumped everybody's tires and then turned around and fired all of them. And we don't really know who's in charge because we keep hearing something new all the time. And here was Mike Borgonzi's response.
A good question. And it's a fair question. And with Chad, you know, I can go back to when we were in Kansas City. There was a few of us that were on that staff there that ended up being 2-14. I think that 2012 year. It was myself, Ryan Poles, Brant Tillis. Ryan Poles is a GM now. It's Bears. I'm here. Brant Tillis is a VP of operations with the Carolina Panthers. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, even though there's, you know, we were losing at the time, there's still really good people in the organization. I get the question. I do. And Chad is invaluable to me. Chad hired me, Amy hired me to really construct the roster. That's what they hired me for. And they empowered me to do that. And what Chad does is, you know, he has knowledge in scouting. He's got knowledge in the salary cap, strategy. Chad is really smart. And Chad supports me with all the decisions that I make. And it's no different in every other organization. You can say the titles and who's above who. You know, it's the same structure in every organization. You got the GM, you have your, you know, VP of strategy, cap, and then you get the head coach. And whatever title you want to give them, those are the three people that work together to make decisions. And there's no one person that, like, you know, if he's got the 53, like, I'm going to go rogue and just make a pick. But they empowered me to make those decisions here, you know, to draft players, to sign players, to construct the roster.
Ding, 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 ding. So, Mike Borgonzi, regardless of whether or not this is true, because, again, who knows, but Mike Borgonzi just told all of us, I run the Titans. And he basically said it in the sense that Chad works for me, even though technically we know that he works for Chad. Again, Amy and Chad brought me in here to build the roster. They brought me in here to make the draft picks. They brought me in here. Chad has been invaluable to me. Like, he works for him. Now, I have no idea if that's true or not. I mean, I remember when Shane Bowen was the defensive coordinator and Jim Schwartz was the senior defensive assistant, and we kept asking who does what, and Vrabel would get up there and be like, well, I'm the head coach, so I make all the decisions. So no matter who is running the show on defense, I run the show. And then Shane Bowen got up there and was like, Jim helps me. And it's very territorial. And so Borgonzi could be making it up, but to that extent, I don't really give a fuck. What I am going to say here is Chad Brinker, I don't know what he does, but Mike Borgonzi said today, this is my team. That's what he's saying. He's saying they brought me in here to run the roster. So the way I look at it is Mike makes the trades. Mike makes the draft picks. Mike Borgonzi today, as far as I'm concerned, took responsibility for the roster. So I don't want to hear any shit. And I can promise this ain't going to come from me. I don't want to hear anything being like, well, that wasn't Borgonzi's pick. That was Brinker's pick. Well, today, Borgonzi got up there and said, they're my picks. So you know what? That's how I'm going to treat it. Now, if they end up firing Borgonzi and Brinker gets out of it, because it doesn't sound like Brinker really does anything. But if that's the case, well, then I'll say, well, Brinker picked this guy to be general manager, and so Brinker shouldn't pick the next general manager. I have a hard time believing, though, that it is going to be as simple as Mike Borgonzi runs the Titans and Mike Borgonzi picks the next coach. Though that probably should be one of the things with which they do. So again, I tweeted this out after I asked the question. I'm like, so what does Chad Brinker do? And I think I know the answer. I think Chad Brinker just sits in his office and he has people run things by him. Like, hey, we're going to trade Jarvis Brownlee for a 6th, 7th pick swap. And Brinker's probably like, is that the best we can get? Yeah, that's the best we can get. Okay. That's probably what Brinker does. And he probably watches film just so he can say he watched film. And he probably comes up to them with some suggestions of saying, hey, I've got, I saw Johnny Joe from the Cowboys. If they ever waive him, we should put in a claim. And I'm sure they're like, okay. But I'm sure Brinker doesn't really do anything. If I had to be honest with you, I don't think he does anything, which is the only way that he gets out of the blame for all the things that have gone wrong over the last couple of years that apparently now are not his fault at all whatsoever. Like the coach that he was on the committee of picking that they've already fired. Don't blame him. Or the right tackle that they drafted to play left tackle, who they then had to move back over to right tackle. Don't blame Chad. The 38th pick in that draft, whom apparently is too fat and too lazy. Don't blame Chad. So that's the way I view it. And so today, if Mike Borgonzi doesn't want responsibility of the roster, then don't say it's your responsibility. And that's what he did. Now, and I saw somebody say this in the chat when it came to the Titans and, the reaction to the press conference. And I did have to kind of laugh out loud because I did notice on social media, I was at the press conference. Joe says in the YouTube chat, too many reporters waving pom-poms after a press conference. They need to prove themselves first. So I did see the social media reaction to the press conference, which was like, Mike Borgonzi slam dunked that press conference. Mike Borgonzi knocked it out of the park. And I'm like, that might be a little over the top. I mean, again, Mike Borgonzi didn't really say anything that important. I mean, again, he told you that he believes in Cam. He told you that they're going to try to build this around Jeffery Simmons, not through Jeffery Simmons, not using Simmons as an asset. But as far as he didn't really tell you why Jarvis Brownlee got shipped out, other than saying it's not a culture fit and I don't want to go into details. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but I think those details are kind of important. Because if Jarvis Brownlee Jr. wasn't a culture fit because he likes Spider-Man and the defensive coaching staff like Superman, well, now I have a problem with it. If Jarvis Brownlee Jr. walked into the meeting 30 minutes late and said, fuck you, coach, well, now you've got a problem you've got to deal with. So I'm not saying he should have said what Jarvis Brownlee did or why he wasn't a culture fit, but it's not like there was a lot of transparency, I felt like, in the press conference. I was glad that he took a stand and said, I run the team. I was glad that he made it known that, hey, we believe Cam is Joe Burrow. We think Cam is that ascendant quarterback that'll be good no matter what. He's so good, we can't fuck him up. I mean, I don't believe that, but hey, at least you're putting your name to it. And he did answer the questions, and he answered them respectfully. The idea that, oh my God, this press conference was so good, I think that's probably a little over the top. Now, that's certainly better than Rand last year telling Nick Suss that the ball didn't bounce their way the way that he did in Detroit after the game. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, the ball didn't bounce their way. And D. Mace and Chris Sanders are sitting there trying to argue with me that, no, he was talking metaphorically. I'm like, he said on that play, the ball bounced their way and it didn't bounce our way. He's talking about the actual ball. And at least Mike Borgonzi didn't do that. But was it some incredible press conference? No, it wasn't. It was fine. There were a couple things, though, that I did hear in the press conference that I'm like, I can do without this. The first, I don't need to hear how good the rookie class is all the time. The rookie class is fine. Cam, right now, stinks. I mean, just calling it how it is. The Athletic today put out their midseason all-rookie team. Jackson Dart is the all-rookie quarterback. Cam Ward is the runner-up. And Dane Brugler at The Athletic wrote, quote, that runner-up was a close call between Ward and Dillon Gabriel is not ideal for Tennessee. So I'm not going to get too excited about the quarterback when say like the rookie class looks great when the quarterback is 33rd in the NFL in QBR. The second round pick is hurt, and when the second round pick played, he sucks. The third round pick was hurt, and he hasn't really played much. The fourth round picks are fine. Chim DK looks like a player that can be a starter on your team, not your number one receiver, because he's not going to be Jamar Chase, but he looks like a guy that can be a starter on your team when you're good, a la Justin McCarron's, if you all remember Justin McCarron's back in the day. That's what Chim DK looks like. And you can win with a Justin McCarron's as your wide receiver 2. You cannot win with Justin McCarron's as wide receiver 1. Gunnar Helm. I think he looks like a backup tight end. He's got 20 catches and 1 touchdown. So to sit there and just bang the drum for how good the rookie class has been, it's like, has it? Like, what are our expectations here? I remember when I was a little Titan fan, when I was in the 8th grade, and I just thought that 2003 draft class was going to be incredible. Andre Woolfolk in the first round, he was the nickel, and then he got hurt, was out for the year. But when he comes back, he'll be the man. Tyrone Calico, for about the first 6 weeks of his NFL career, scored a touchdown in pretty much every game, and then never caught another pass, I don't think, ever in the NFL. Chris Brown, remember him? In that playoff game against the Ravens, Chris Brown, the kind of change up to Eddie George, and they drafted Ryan Long, who won the Outland Trophy at Washington State. I was like, this draft class is going to be incredible. And it was terrible. It was all terrible. Calico, and I just pulled it up right now, Calico had 18 catches and 4 touchdowns his rookie year. I swear to God, he had all 4 of those touchdowns in the first 4 games he played. Calico, let's see. Touchdown week 1, touchdown week 2, touchdown week 8, touchdown week 9. So didn't have him in all the first 4 games, but it felt that way. So again, he was just banging his chest about the rookie class, and I'm like, I'm not sure the rookie class is that good. The second thing I don't need to hear about is how good the assistant coaches are. I mean, talking about Mike McCoy's doing a great job, and Denard is a great coach, and Nick Holtz is doing a great job, and Bo Hardegree's doing a great job. And Mike, we watch the games. First of all, we know you're going to fire all those guys at the end of the year, and you should fire all those guys at the end of the year, but we watch the games. We've seen the 87 screen passes they throw. We've seen the wildcat snaps, the trick plays that don't work. We've heard Denard Wilson make excuses for 2 years about why they can't get a stop. So I know what he was doing. He wants everybody to do the best they can for the rest of the year and to get through it. And so the way to do that is to pat everybody on the back. But give me a break talking about the assistant coaches. So I thought that was incredibly self-serving when it came to the draft class talk, because I don't think the draft class has been that good. And I thought it was just bullshit when he was talking about the assistant coaches. And the other thing that I just absolutely rolled my eyes at was Mike Borgonzi talking about the player development. Anybody else catch this? The player development program that they've got, where they're kind of working with these players, off the field and everything. It's all encapsulating, and the players have really been great with this player development program. And we got to shout out Dave Ziegler, my guy who I hired, Dave Ziegler, and Bryce Wasserman, the owner's son-in-law. We cannot not give credit to Bryce Wasserman. We got to pat him on the ass because he reports to Amy and he's not getting fired. So we got to go ahead and give him credit. And I thought, brown noser, which is exactly what that was. So, I mean, again, I thought it was solid. I thought he articulated the plan and he took responsibility for the team. Those are the two things that matter to me, and got it. I don't agree with the plan, and I'm now going to hold him accountable for the responsibility that he took with the team, but solid. That wasn't like Rand, where every single thing was, well, was that really Rand's decision or was that Vrabel? Who knows? Oh, I'm glad that we didn't have to deal with it. As far as it being a slam dunk press conference, that's a little too much for me. I mean, I am reading the YouTube chat right now on the Tyrone Calico thing. Ah, fuck it. We'll put it up there. Jeremy says Calico banged his girlfriend in a public parking lot and went all down. Is that true? Is that actually true about Tyrone Calico? I don't know. And if this were the radio, I probably wouldn't have put that up there. But, whatever. Richard says the jury is still out on Borgonzi, but at least you didn't have to hear how he formed a deep relationship with a player in 15 minutes. Yeah, I mean, the talk about, relationships are going to make a difference. I'm glad we didn't do that. Although we did hear about how great the assistant coaches have been, which I still can't get over because I still think that's ridiculous. Chip says, you are correct. Cam did not warrant the number 1 overall pick, and Simmons is not the cultural leader that they think he is. Good luck, Titans. Will be a very long several years. I think Simmons has done a good job leading the team and the way he's been playing. I think he's done a good job this year. I understand the decision to keep Simmons and to try to build around Simmons and to think that that'll get you out of this. I don't agree with it, but I at least understand what they're thinking. I understand. That is at least something. That's not, well, the ball didn't bounce our way, which again is what I think a lot of us are unfortunately kind of used to. One person says, Borgonzi seems focused too much on the intangibles. I'll just put it to you like this. I do feel like, and I think Mike Borgonzi knows that I think this, I do think that we talk too much about the intangibles, and I'm more worried about the tangibles. I'm more worried about the actual meat and potatoes of playing quarterback than I am about, this guy is a tough son of a bitch, I'll tell you. It's okay, that's great, but can he see over a defensive lineman, throw the ball in the middle of the field? That I don't know. Davis says, should have asked Borgonzi if he regrets not taking the Giants offer. That's all we need to know. I mean, did you not hear him talk about how great Cam's going to be? And about how they can't mess Cam up? The answer, he would have absolutely said is no. One person says, I trust Borgonzi more than Brinker for sure. Was actually refreshing not to listen to 25 minutes of dumbass speak. I'll tell you, man. The Brinker availabilities are usually pretty funny. Because he said something in the past that can always be held against him. Like that podcast he did about how smart they were and how great Rand was and Callahan. And it's you can always just go pull from that and be like, Exhibit F. When you said this, Chad. And then Chad, I don't know why, he gets super nervous and all this stuff. And then he's just makes himself look dumb. And so I do agree that the Borgonzi by himself is better than Borgonzi and Brinker together. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very, very excited to welcome on Mr. Nick Suss joining us to the program here of the Titans. What's your exact title? I hate saying Titans beat writer, Suss, when it comes to you because you don't work for the Titans. I don't want to give people the idea that you work for the Titans. So what is the exact title? Is it NFL team beat reporter for the Tennessean? What's the exact title?
I mean, I hate to just say it's Titans beat writer after that big buildup you gave. Titans beat writer for the Tennessean is usually what I go with. So I'll take that. Yeah.
Sus, my big takeaway from the Borgonzi press conference. He's got a plan. I don't agree with the plan, but he's got a plan. They think Cam Ward is going to be a transcendent quarterback. No matter what happens, they think he's too tough and too great to not, to be ruined by it. And he is going to build around Simmons. And then everything else I just felt was kind of window dressing. I don't agree with the plan, but it does feel different than, say, the previous general manager, who I wasn't certain had a plan. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, I think there's a plan. I think that it's a little undercooked publicly to say the plan is to develop him. Of course, that's the plan. That's everybody's plan with every player they draft. Nobody's like, and we're going to make him worse. But I do think that truly once you've picked the quarterback, all you can do is go forward. The plan isn't going to be we're evaluating new quarterbacks. The plan isn't going to be we're going to bring in competition for the guy. The plan has to be you got, $119 million in salary cap space projected for next year, and that's not counting if they make moves on Ridley or Snead or Cushenberry or any of these big contracts they can move off of. You got all that salary cap space. You're going to have a top 5 draft pick. You're going to have 9 picks for now. That could very easily become 10, 11, 12 with some moves in April. The plan is be good by 2027. And I don't think they made any moves at the deadline that make them better in 2026. But I do think they're positioning themselves that when Cam's here in year 3, things can be better. So if that's the plan, is to be better by your quarterback's 3rd year, it's not a revelatory plan. It's like we were talking about earlier. You're doing the same idea that every other team in the NFL has, and it's worked for 3 or 4 of them. We'll see if it can work for the Titans, but that has to be what we can evaluate as the plan right now.
So do you agree with the plan? Did you agree with what you heard today? And did you agree with what they did or didn't do at the deadline?
I probably would have tried to move some bigger name pieces to try and get better sooner, but it's easy to say that when you have the privilege of not being patient. Like, I don't know. I probably would have, in a vacuum, said, oh, you could have gotten a 1st and a 2nd for Simmons? Consider it. But I'm not the person who has to decide what do I want to be the symbolic figure standard in the locker room. And if they value the idea that you need to have somebody in the locker room that people can point to as that's what success as a Tennessee Titan looks like, it's a good idea to keep Jeff. It's the same complaint that we had. I know you had it. I know I've had it after moving Kevin Byard a couple of years ago, of you create a vacuum of there's nobody that people are looking up to anymore. And so if you have Jeffery Simmons gone and then the only person to look up to in the locker room is Cam Ward, that's no track record of success. So if you get rid of that guy, I understand you're defeating your own idea of standard. By that exact same idea, you could also just go get 3 really good football players. And so what is the value? Is the standard the value, or is improving the talent on the roster the value? And I think they opted on the side of standard there.
Did you feel like that he gave enough info on Jarvis Brownlee? Because he said today, I knew that was going to be a controversial trade. He's a young ascending player, but basically said it wasn't a culture fit. And I don't want to go into details as to why it's not a culture fit, but it wasn't a culture fit. And I'm like, if you're going to say it's not a culture fit while he seems to be fitting in with the Jets and playing well with the Jets, don't you kind of then need to explain yourself a little bit more?
I don't think that he I think that he understands that people aren't stupid, that some people are smarter than they are. And if you go and make a list of 3 or 4 qualities that you do value in players and then say, this guy wasn't a culture fit, you can put 2 and 2 together and make 4. If you want to talk about accountability, if you want to talk about the willingness to get better each and every day in practice, if you want to talk about any of the, I think it was 4 qualities that Borgonzi brought up, just assume he's talking that Jarvis didn't have those. Like, we don't have to specifically say on September 9th, Jarvis came out to practice and lollygagged, or on September 18th, this happened. Like, I don't think we need to specify. I don't think the general manager needs to specifically say, here is the timeline. That stuff's going to come out at some point, off seasons down the road. Whenever it happens, it's going to come out because that stuff doesn't stay contained forever, especially when so many people are changing teams and changing jobs and being fired and all that stuff. But for now, I think he gave a sufficient answer of just, this is what we want in a football player. This is what Jarvis wasn't.
Do you think that Borgonzi hinted at who the next coach is going to be today? A lot of people seem to, I think, hang on to the comments he made about the relationship that the general manager and the coach need to have. I think a lot of people are hanging on to that. I think a lot of people are circling Matt Nagy. I have thought the whole time that Matt Nagy was the most likely candidate to be the next head coach of the Titans, really since the second they hired Mike Borgonzi. But I didn't walk away from that press conference thinking that he tipped his hand at all as to who the next coach is going to be. Do you think he tipped his hand as to who the next coach is going to be?
No, I mean, short answer. No, I didn't hear it's McCarthy or it's Nagy or anything specific out of this press conference. The only two things he said were, one, a guy who's a good leader, and one, a guy who I can work well with. We all thought 2 years ago, the whole rationale was, Carthon and Callahan can work well together. That's what they always say. You always want a guy who can work well with the other guy. We're not done preaching collaboration. We're not done preaching the idea that not one person is in charge and there's going to be a decision-making triumvirate and there's going to be all these people who work together. You go through the press conference today before we even asked a question.
Oh, where'd you go, Sus? Oh, it's so tough. Sus freezing up on me. That's okay. Let's see if we remove him and add him back, if that makes a difference. Oh, not sure that it will. Oh, that's so depressing. Oh, and Sus was doing so well, too. And I was actually wondering where he was going with that, as far as who the next coach could or could not be. But that's why Sus, I don't know what the Tennesseans paying, but they got to upgrade on that Cricket Wi-Fi for whatever that's worth. Okay. Let's see if we got Sus back. Sus, we got you back. How's that sound?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Way to go, Sus.
Hold on.
I just removed you again. My bad. There you go. Good job, Sus. All right. You were talking about the coach and about how you didn't get any tell as to who it was going to be.
Yeah. I evoked Bryce Wasserman's name and immediately disappeared. I don't know what happens there. But yeah, I mean, look, they mentioned a lot of people who are going to be involved in this process. I think it's fundamentally going to come down to Chad and Mike finding a guy they get along with and getting a guy who fits whatever this standard they're building towards is. This, you walk in the room and you know it when you feel it type thing. That's the closest they've come to defining it is, people see Patrick Mahomes and they know what to expect. We want people to see Jeffery Simmons and know what to expect.
Up. I'm actually kind of enjoying this picture of Sus that's right there, but damn, swing and a miss again on that one. So, hold on. We got you back, Sus.
Okay, you talk. I'll figure something out.
Okay. I will just say that I think that they're actually going to do a coaching search, but it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being Matt Nagy. The one name, when he talked about leader and was like, I don't care if it's offense or defense, that Dave Tobe has been the special teams coach in Kansas City forever. And I was wondering if maybe that's what he's talking about, like that leader guy. Well, he's a special teams coach, or Spagnuolo, he's a leader. Or I was wondering if maybe that was a little insight there.
It could be. I was thinking about this on Monday or Sunday or something. There were two coaches this offseason who got hired more on the strength of leadership than on scheme. One of them 7-2, and the other one's 1-7. Like Aaron Glenn not doing a very good job. Vrabel clearly doing a pretty good job. There's no perfect formula. You can hire based on leadership. You better hire a bunch of really good assistant coaches if you're going to do that. You better have a lot of really good players if you're going to do that. Are the Titans a leader away? I don't think so. I don't think anybody thinks they're a leader away. They're 4 or 5 really good players away. And so leadership only takes you so far. If you got a good roster, having a great leader is going to be very beneficial. If you don't have a good roster, who cares?
When do you expect the Titans to be competitive again? And I don't mean competitive like for the Super Bowl competitive, but I mean competitive Sunday in and out. Next year, 2 years, 3 years, when do you expect the Titans to actually have a pulse again?
October 2026. You give them that first month of next season to figure stuff out under a new coach. And if you're not clicking within 6-7 games under the new coach, alarm bells have to go up about Cam. So these next 8 games don't matter. Like, I'm not saying don't watch them. Have fun. Know what they are. watch the games and know what it is you're testing to see how good Cam can be. But you got to start looking like a team that's biting at some kneecaps by mid-fall next year before ringing any fire alarms.
Did you buy the assistant coach talk that Borgonzi had today, where every time the assistant coaches came up, it was, they're doing such a great job? I just found that as like a pat on the ass, like, hey, get us through the next 9 weeks and let's all have a Merry Christmas. But there's a part of me that worries that he actually may think these guys are good coaches and may try to keep them on the staff next year.
He brought it up, twice? Like, I don't think this
2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I don't think this was like an overwhelming trend to read too much into. He brought up Hardigree and Holtz and McCoy in regard to Cam learning the fundamentals. And if you listen back to that quote, the second after he says that, he goes, and are we going to have a new scheme next year? Maybe. So he immediately undercut that one. And I'm trying to remember another time he mentioned an assistant by name. It might have been when he was asked about Denard Wilson. And said,
he talked about how great Denard is. He was just pumping Denard's tires today.
Yeah. And like that sort of stuff, we all know that the general manager is not going to, if the general manager's condition for hiring a new coach is, I will hire you, but I get to pick the assistants, he's not going to get a coach. So like the coach is still going to have a lot of say. And if the coach comes in and says, I want Denard Wilson, we'll move forward from there. But from now, Borgonzi saying nice things about his employees, what are you going to do? You're not going to show up in the media and say, I dislike these 4 assistants. Like that's not going to happen.
What did you think of the comments Borgonzi made today about Brinker's responsibility and his responsibility?
Honest answer? I didn't know people were still confused about that, Jerry.
Seriously?
Yeah, Borgonzi's in charge of the roster.
So what did Brinker do?
Everything that's not the roster.
What is that?
Do you really need me to spell out what things football teams do?
So you mean to tell me that Chad Brinker's job is getting the grass mowed, and yet at the end of the day, if Brinker believes they need to take the quarterback or they need to trade for Sam Darnold, then Brinker has the authority to say, well, I know my focus is on getting the grass mowed, but we need to go ahead and take Cam Ward.
I mean, if that is the case, why is that implausible? Why is it implausible that somebody can have a job but can also be advisor for somebody else's job? I'm not saying that's the case. I understand that there are salary cap dynamics that go into it. I know there are relationships with front office personnel and with Amy and with the rest of ownership and with the business side and all of that has to go into it, that there are way too many roles for one person to do as general manager, and that's why those jobs are usually split up. And granted, the general manager is usually ahead on the pecking order of the other person, but we understand these jobs get divided all the time. Borgonzi, we know what his role is. Chad has a lot of stuff that he does that doesn't matter to the average fan. And that's why we get confused about that or this. This isn't a defense of it, but like this is just what it is. We don't need to keep re-legislating.
So who fired the coach?
I think Amy did. I think we all expect that, right?
So Amy fires the coach. Brinker's the one who talks about firing the coach, but Borgonzi's the one who's in charge of the team.
Is the coach the roster?
But it's all the same, right?
No, those are different words. Staff and roster are different words. Why would you put somebody in
charge of the roster but not put them in charge of the coach?
Why would you put somebody in playing running back and not in charge of receiver? They're different jobs.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Not. The person who's in charge of the football team is the one who picks the coach and is the one who picks the players.
Yeah, that's the owner. The owner is the one who's in charge. The general manager builds the roster.
So the general manager just builds the roster, but doesn't evaluate the coach.
He can be involved. Everybody can have their fingers in everything. But at the end of the day, the general manager's job is roster.
And you think that this is like
understandable?
Conducive to
yes.
success.
Conducive to success. I full-heartedly believe players decide how successful you are. I don't care how good your coach is. I don't care how good your general manager is. Go get good players.
I care about how good your general manager is, because in order to get good players, the general manager has to know what he's doing.
Yeah, or you luck into the number 1 pick a year that there's a great player. Like sometimes it falls into your lap. But fundamentally, this Palace intrigue stuff, I feel like it's been explained. I feel like we know what Borgonzi does. We have less of a grasp on what Brinker does, but we know what Brinker doesn't do. And by process of elimination, he does that stuff.
So then why does Mike Borgonzi say that the next coach has to have a good relationship with the general manager if he's not the one who's hiring the coach? If
Because
somebody
he's the
else
one
is
getting
hiring
the
coach?
players that the coach coaches. Because the coach says, I want players like this, and the GM says, okay, me and my staff will evaluate and find players like this.
I mean, I guess the way
I guess that's just football. That's just the concept of football.
The way that I look at it is if a GM is actually the general manager, then the GM is in charge of the roster and the GM is in charge of the coach. And I've never seen this where it's, Bubba over here is in charge of the coach and Johnny over here is in charge of the roster. And here you go.
If in a perfect world, nobody's in charge of the coach. In a perfect world, the GM and the coach are equal and the owner is their boss.
See, I don't like that. I like that the coach answers to the general manager.
You want that? Why? Like the coach should handle the stuff that happens on the field, and the general manager should handle the stuff that brings those people to the field.
Floyd used to tell me the job of the general manager is to protect the team from the coach. That was what he, at the end of the day, believed that job was. I think that the general manager should hire the coach. I think the general manager should evaluate the coach. And I think the general manager should fire the coach. And I know that it doesn't happen like that in the league because at the end of the day, when it comes to coach and quarterback, and the general manager may have a push one way or another, but it is the owner who is picking the quarterback. It is the owner who is picking the coach. It is the owner who is deciding if we give $100 million to that player or not. I get it. But when it comes to, like, if I owned the team, I would not be qualified. I don't think I'd be qualified to evaluate who's a good coach or who's not a good coach or who shares the general manager's vision or who doesn't share the general manager, the way that the general manager should be qualified to know who's a good coach and if that coach shares his vision.
Sure. And that's why there are search committees and multiple people on them. I don't want one person picking the coach.
Oh my God, you want a committee?
No, I'm saying a committee is more than one person. I'm saying that if you have two people, that's your committee. I'm not saying hire an outside search firm. I'm saying that Chad Brinker is not picking the head coach. I'm saying that Mike Borgonzi is not picking the head coach. I'm saying Amy Adams Strunk is not picking the head coach. I'm saying their goal is to pick a head coach together. And if somebody has final say, which I know people in the comments really care about final say, and Jared, I know you really care about final say, how often do we think that gets exercised? How many times a year?
Final say?
How many times a year do you think there is a debate where final say has to be pulled? Once?
10.
You think 10 times a year?
I do. But I think it's only about the things that really matter. So, like, that's why you and I we've talked at length how many times about who actually wanted Cam Ward.
Yeah, we do that. We do that pretty frequently.
The way I look at it is if I'm Chad Brinker and I am technically in charge and I think that the next Mahomes is out there, and I think we're going to pass on the next Mahomes, I'm saying, oh, whoa, we ain't passing on the next Mahomes. And if I'm Chad Brinker and I don't think that Cam Ward is the next Mahomes, I mean, am I not going to play my trump card? Let's use me as Chad Brinker for the example here. Do you think if I had authority over Mike Borgonzi that Cam Ward would be the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans right now, or would Sam Darnold be the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans right now?
I think that using you as the example is so going against general human nature. Because you're right. You're right. You would have picked Sam Darnold. Okay, but general human nature dictates that people don't overly step and do stuff when other people are given expertise, because then they're putting themselves on the chopping block.
So
self-preservation doesn't dictate go do everything yourself.
If Brinker felt the way that I felt about Darnold and Brinker felt the way that I felt about Ward, would he have said, hey, I hired Mike and Mike wants Cam Ward, so fuck it, let's go with the Cam Ward route? Or would Brinker have said, no, Sam Darnold at 28 years old is better right now, in my opinion, as a former scout, than Cam Ward will ever be. We're not drafting Cam Ward number one.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe he would have. He didn't. So I don't think that he did. Like, fundamentally, I don't know. But I really think that this whole conversation about final say is much ado about something that comes up less than 5 times a year.
You think with Mike Vrabel as the coach, you covered that team. You think that didn't come up 5 times?
I think it did then. I think it did then, and that's why it was a big debate then. But still asking about what's happening with Brinker and Borgonzi, I don't think it's a factor now. I don't think it matters that much now.
So apparently word on the street, I actually wonder if you've heard this. Apparently word on the street was on draft night 2023, the Skoronski draft pick, I guess Denver made some sort of offer that was just an abomination of an offer. And Rand almost took it, and Vrabel like basically had to say, like, we are not doing that. And that was when I was kind of like, okay, so Rand is technically in charge, but Vrabel apparently has veto power to say, no, we're not doing that. Because apparently, just from what I've heard, and this was pure gossip, but apparently like Rand was going to take a trade with the Broncos that was just a doozy. And Vrabel stepped in and said no.
I haven't heard that specifically. I've heard things about draft night plan 2023. All of it's secondhand, so I'm not comfortable reporting it. But the list of players they were going after, from what I've heard, it's very strange and very surprising. And
well, we know about CJ Stroud.
Beyond that, I think everybody can put together what they were trying to do moving up. But there were other players that just did not fit the Vrabel sensibility, that did not end up getting picked, either because maybe they went too soon or because things you're alluding to. Yeah, there were some strangenesses, but none of it is more than just people evaluate who they evaluate. And back then, yeah, final say mattered a lot.
So D Mace, when I was working with him, he said that Rand wanted Zay Flowers and wouldn't say how he knew that, but I mean, put two and two together.
I've heard Zay Flowers. I've heard some other names that are coming up in the comments. This is not rumors go around, but yeah, there are.
Well,
that night was strange.
Just give me the check, yes or no. Like I saw one in the comments that Bijan Robinson. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
You heard that they wanted Bijan Robinson? They were going to have Bijan Robinson and Derrick Henry on the same team.
It's all secondhand. So again, rumors are rumors. I'm not trying to say this is true, but stuff goes around.
Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable.
It's all secondhand. No blame to me. But
Nick Suss thinks this committee that the Titans are going to have to hire the coach. That's the answer. Maybe one day at the new Nissan Stadium, they will build instead of building a statue for one person, they'll build a whole monument to the committee. They'll have 9 different statues next to each other for everybody on the committee.
Jared out here explaining the concept of Mount Rushmore as if it's a terrible, terrible thing.
Mount Rushmore is like multiple presidents over 100 years.
I'm just saying, you're like, oh, outrageous idea, a statue of multiple people.
No, George Washington, these are all different wars. George Washington, the Revolutionary War. Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War.
Thomas Jefferson was a contemporary, so it's only 3 wars.
That is true. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was Revolutionary War, but you could probably also give him War of 1812.
You could. That was James Madison, so Jefferson was out, but you could.
Was Jefferson dead by then?
Oh, I don't think he was dead. He just wasn't president.
He's still alive. Was out there knocking up the help.
Yeah, we're making Sally Hemings jokes in 2025. Let's keep doing that.
Unbelievable. Suss, great stuff, man. As always, you'll be on a football show tomorrow with Braden?
Yep.
Okay, that's 9 a.m.?
9 or 10, yeah, I think 9 a.m.
There you go, Nick Suss, great reporter at the Tennessean. Suss, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, happy to help, happy to yell.
Yep, Nick Suss joining us on the program. And I got to tell you, I love Nick Suss. That's a good man right there. But, I mean, come on. This idea that it doesn't matter what Chad Brinker does. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I do love having Nick Suss on the show. Hearing all the rumors about who they could or could not have drafted. Okay, we will get to some of your reaction in the YouTube chat because why not? One person says, Johnny says, so Jared, you have GM experience to say that Borgonzi's plan is bad. You should apply for a GM job. You know, I don't get this. A lot of people always say like, oh, Jared, if you think you're so smart, you should be GM. Let me say this. 2 things on that. Number 1, If I was the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, Sam Darnold would be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. And regardless of the argument of, well, would Sam be this good right here? We'll never know the answer to that. As of right now, Sam Darnold is better than Cam Ward, period. Now, does that mean that he will always be better? I think so, but that is not necessarily the case. Who knows? The second thing is you don't apply for GM jobs. And if the Titans were willing to have me be the general manager, I would take the job. So when you're like, why don't you apply for GM jobs? Fine, I will apply for a GM job. I'm not going to get it, but I would absolutely take it. And I know you guys are going to be like, you would be terrible. I actually think it'd be pretty good. I actually think it'd be pretty good because I'd surround myself with really smart people that have done this before that would help me make the right decisions. Ryan says, if this whole show is going to be you trying to convince us that you know more than Borgonzi, you're fighting an uphill battle. Yeah, again, I don't try to do that. I don't try to say like, hey, I am smarter than the coach or I am smarter than the general manager. Or what I do is I tell you what I think. Because again, when it comes to Mike Borgonzi's plan, I don't agree with it. But that doesn't mean that it won't work. Just like I don't agree with having wild and crazy players on your football team. I don't agree with having troublemakers and guys that sleep with other guys' wives and, Michael Irvin doing all that cocaine. But you know what? The Kansas City Chiefs have those guys getting arrested at receiver every single year. And the Kansas City Chiefs always seem to get their shit together when it matters. So you can win like that. I just don't believe in that. I believe in a disciplined football team. The way Mahomes plays with the running around in the backyard football and Kelsey's just going to run and get open and Mahomes will throw it to him. And that works. And that wouldn't work for me. I want an offense that's on schedule, which is more of what Tom Brady does. Now, again, Tom Brady wins Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes wins Super Bowls. So I just have a different philosophy that Mike Borgonzi has about how to build the Titans. That doesn't mean that philosophy is wrong. It just means that it's different. I don't think his philosophy will work, but what the fuck do I know? There have been a lot of things in my life that I've been wrong about. So I am saying that. Now, if you're telling me that, hey, it's impossible for me to know more than the Titans general manager, well, I'll tell you this right now. I knew more than the last one. So, look, do I think the coaches know more than me? Yeah, I do. Do I think the general managers, generally speaking, know more than me? Yeah, I do. Do I think the last guy knew more than me? No. That I do not. And I also think that I can kind of help some of these guys out a little bit. I think with Borgonzi, I think that doing the press conference today, although I didn't think it was super transformative or anything else, I think that helps. And I think being honest and explaining decisions helps, even if they're not necessarily the right decisions. And every general manager just assumes that all that matters is whether or not I win or lose. And I don't think that's true. Because as we've talked about many times, J-Rob won a lot of games. But J-Rob didn't do a lot of media. J-Rob wasn't super friendly, doing media. And he did some, but he didn't do a ton. And I think that hurt J-Rob in the end. That again, he got up there when they traded A.J. Brown and was like, I have to make the hard decisions. And it's like, if you were a little bit more forthcoming with the explanations as to why A.J. Brown got traded, maybe people would understand it a little bit more. Daniel says, Brinker has surrounded himself with football guys, Borgonzi, Ziegler, and McKenzie. Yeah, those aren't the guys I would have surrounded myself with, but he at least has done that. And then bragged about all the Super Bowls they've won. Jason says, you've seen a handful of games where his primary target, talking about Cam Ward, where his primary targets are all rookies, and he had no running game. Greg Cosell thinks Cam Ward is a starter and that he's pretty sharp. Well, won't history kind of be the judge of this? The way that, again, this February when I was pumping the Sam Darnold tires and people told me that he sucked, and they were like, oh, he sucks. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think he sucks. And then there's a game like Sunday where it's like, I'm like a guy on the Maury Povich show. Be like, I told you. I wasn't sleeping with your grandma, and the lie detector test determined I was telling the truth. Like, isn't that kind of what history's out to be? So when people say, hey, Cam will develop, Jared, you will see. Let's see it. I got season tickets to the new stadium. I'd like them to be good. If this guy's the next Mahomes, I'm here for it. I want it. Making that of whatever you want it to be. I do love the fact. I mean, again, I'm sitting here reading through the chats of all the people that are like, well, Cam Ward doesn't have JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Sam Darnold's only good because he's got Jackson Smith and Jigba. First of all, most every team has a good wide receiver. Like most every team has one good wide receiver. You happen to struggle with that right now, but every team has one good wide receiver. JSN last year was basically Calvin Ridley. He had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now this year, he's leading the league in receiving. See what I'm saying? Like, that's because of Sam. Like, that's because of Sam. Last year, everybody had those, well, it was just the coach and it was the players and it was well, then he goes somewhere else, does the same thing. Well, it's just the coach, it's just the players, it's just the, okay. For whatever that is worth. Okay, I want to hit on this. Did anybody see what happened to the Predators last night? Because we need to talk about this. I went to the Predators game 2 nights ago on Monday night. They lost to Vancouver in overtime, and it was kind of a gutting loss. They were able to tie the game in regulation, and then they go to overtime, and Vancouver scores with like 0.8 seconds left. But it was just kind of a boring November NHL game, and the Predators are kind of a boring November NHL team. So it didn't make the show yesterday with all the trade deadline talk, and it probably shouldn't have made the show. And last night, the Predators played the Minnesota Wild, and I could lie to you and tell you I watched the game. I didn't watch the game. Apparently, there's a new season of Nobody Wanted This on Netflix. Lindsay's back in town, so guess what? We watched that. But I did see how they lost the game last night in overtime. Did anybody else see this? I am not the biggest defender of the Nashville Predators right now because I think that it's time to fire the coach, and they're hanging on, and they're not totally out of the playoff picture, and we're not at U.S. Thanksgiving, but I worry. I watched the game on Monday night. I didn't see Steven Stamkos do anything on Monday night. Now, I know he scored the game tire last night, but I didn't see him do anything Monday night for the entire game. So I'm like, let's see if somebody else can coach him up, whatever. But that has nothing to do with this. If you saw how they lost the game last night, even if you don't care, you should be offended. The way they lost last night, I'm telling you, they got cheated. And I go nuts whenever Twitter people get all upset about a rule they don't like because, hey, I don't like the fact that you fumble the ball out of the back of the end zone and it's a touchback for the other team. I don't like the fact that, again, there are certain rules in sports that if I were the one in charge, I'd get rid of. I don't like the fact that in the NFL, it's almost impossible to get an onside kick. But those are the rules. The other night in the World Series, ball got lodged underneath the fence, and the center fielder for the Dodgers puts his hands up, and I'm like, that's a ground rule double. Those are the rules. You may not like it because he can just go in and pick it up and throw it out, but it's a ground rule double. Those are the rules. When it comes to the Predators and how they lost last night, Justus Onen in the goalie knocked the goal off the pegs, which I think should be a penalty. When a goalie sees something come in or a defenseman and they knock the goal off the pegs, I think that is a cheap move and I don't like it. And the rule, which is apparently rule 63.7, says that if you knock the goal off the pegs, the official can assume that a puck was going to go in and give it a goal. But last night, and this is an official judgment call, last night, Minnesota missed the fucking net. They missed it. They never put it in the net. And so the Predators lost the game because the officials on the ice apparently just assumed that if the goal didn't get knocked off the pegs, that goal would have gone in last night. but it never went in the fucking net. I couldn't believe it. I watched it last night because Twitter starts going crazy about how the Preds got screwed. And I'm like, let me see what happened. And so I'm watching this like on Twitter and I'm looking at my phone and I'm laying in bed and I'm like, holy shit, they got cheated. Oh my God. And again, it's not like I'm defending the Predators here. It's not like I'm saying like, oh my God, they got cheated. They should be cup champions. No, but just like the fact, and I understand the rule and I get the rule. If like a puck is headed towards the empty net and it is on a beeline for that net and a defenseman's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to stop the puck, but maybe I can knock the goal off the pegs. And an official says that puck was going in, go ahead and count it. Fine. It's the same as pass interference in football, right? Like you think the pass is going to be complete. You tackle the receiver, flag thrown, spot of the foul because we thought you would have caught the ball. Fine. But they didn't even put it in the net. It wasn't headed to the net. It wasn't. The guy just tapped it 5 seconds after the net was dislodged. Oh my God. Again, I don't know how many people care about this. It's one hockey game, but holy crap, was that just ridiculous last night. And I'm not one to sit there and be like, they got cheated. But the Predators last night got cheated. They got cheated. Like that's the kind of thing where if I was commissioner of the league, that's the kind of thing where if I was commissioner of the league, I would be like, hey, like that's bullshit. We're not, I'm picking up the phone if I'm commissioner. I'm like, oh my God. Whew. I'm like sweating. I'm so mad about that Predators call yesterday. One final thing on the show. If I had a college football show, I'd make a big deal about this. I don't have a college football show. Maybe I'll have a college football show here at some point. The first college football playoff rankings have been released. Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, A&M 3, Bama 4, Vanderbilt 16, Tennessee 25. The first year they did this, I was on the air in Louisville, which was a college market, and people love talking college. And it was all this talk about what do these rankings mean? And then I realized this all going to be determined in the end by how many losses you have. And so the weekly show is just for people to talk about it, just to get content out of it. It works every time. I can never bring myself to get into the talk about the committee and the rankings until the very end. Until the very end when they do something like they put Florida State out even though they haven't lost a game. Then I get mad. But the weekly show, I think it's stupid. I don't think it means anything. So make of that what you will. And by the way, this is a true story. I do not believe it. I'm not going to tell you why. But it does have to do with recreational cannabis. Which is funny because I think somebody in the chat earlier today was like, Jared hates marijuana. It's like, I don't know about that. But I do not know if my son, Jackson Reese Stillman, I do not know if he is with us if it is not for the college football playoffs committee's decision to put Alabama in the 14 playoff over Florida State. Like, I think my son's birth was contingent on Alabama, Florida State. And I'll just leave it at that. You can think of it whatever you want to think of it. That's it for us. Like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Even if you're like Jimmy and you hate me. Boy, look, Jimmy looks mad. Even if you're like Jimmy and you hate me, like and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow live at 2 o'clock. Thanks to Nick Suss here on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical. Stillman & Company at Stillman & Co. on YouTube. Like and subscribe. We'll see you.